is 2013. I'm fresh out of school, living on my own, trying to relax. Being an adult, doing the things we don't love doing, like going to work all the time. And then I feel a gentle tap on my shoulder. My time has come. Bioshock just dropped its third game. Let's talk about that one today. So, Bioshock Infinite came out in 2013. I didn't really have all that much access to internet between 2012 and 2013 coming up to its release, so I didn't really know it was coming out until pretty much when it dropped. I think I was walking through an old EB Games / GameStop location, and it was just kind of there. And I was like, huh. Didn't expect to see that, but alright. If you hear any rattling, do not mind my cat in the background throwing stuff around. But this game redefined for me what it felt to feel that wow again. Like with Bioshock 1, we got that wow. Because it was the first time we ever saw the city under the sea rapture. When Bioshock 2 came out, we got some wow. I mean, we were the big daddy. But it was rapture again. This time, we got our wow back. How do you contend with the city underwater? Well, of course, you put the city in the sky. And something about that, it wasn't like a simple wow that blows my mind. It was, they did such a good job making it that it blew my mind. And there's a running theme in the game of alternate timelines that I think has to be spoken to first to make everything make sense. By all means, Bioshock Infinite happens way before Bioshock 1. Like, I actually looked for the timeline, which was in the Hall of Heroes. Columbia was done being constructed in 1893. Rapture didn't open its doors until 1951. In that point, then, Columbia also seceded from America in 1902, right around the Boxer Rebellion. And then your character does not arrive in Columbia until 1912. So, you arrive in Columbia, and Columbia exists longer in its historical time period than Rapture. And I think the thing that gets me most is we need to look at the artistic take on this, is the very blatant racism that's in place. Not because the director's like, aha, this is funny. It was lore accurate to its time period. The Irish, anyone of any color, pretty much anyone, were just looked down upon. You saw it earlier in the game where they had separate washrooms, where they would have posters hanging everywhere that have very Jim Crow-esque things on them. And if you were not educated in what that time period looked like for America, that kind of thing could definitely swing at you wild and catch you off guard. For a lot of the stuff we have on here, a lot of the game takes inspiration that, Father Comstock was his own god figure. They do have some Latin in the game, which is not common to see outside of church scenarios, which this is definitely a very big church scenario. When they present the opening to you, they have Gladium Clavium Volumen, which literally just means a sword, a key, volume. But in Latin, we can also use exchange words like volume would be text. The only other big Latin word we have would be the vox populi, which populi is group or population, and vox is noise or voice, depending on how you root your Latin. So, voice of the peoples, or voice for people, I guess would be the simplified conjunctive. Uh, with all the nerd speak out of the way, though, looking at the storyline, it starts off a little confusing because they don't really explain the multiple timelines thing to you until a bit later in the game. But the whole game kind of teeters on needing those multiple timelines to get through. And the more you play, the more you get to see that Booker uh, is fighting his own demons, so to speak, and that in the course of the first half of the game takes place in about a half a day. The second half of the game takes place across 6 months, and then the very last part of the game goes from that 6 months back to the same half of the other half of the day. Maybe even the next day over, 24 hours max. So this game takes place simultaneously in 24 hours and in 6 months. Depending on which timeline we're in. Um, there were a few callbacks to other games that I wanted to look at. Battleship Bay definitely has a haha funny. I may have grabbed it a bit fast in the game when I went through, but I went back on a second playthrough in 1999 mode, and I realized there is a baby stroller in Battleship Bay that has a box of pistol ammo. And it's not too clever to say that that would be a direct callback to the first game that Ken Levine worked on, Bioshock 1, where the first weapon outside of the wrench you get is the pistol, and you pick it up from a baby carriage. So I love when developers do little callbacks like that. Something that's not super on the nose, but is at least smart enough to be like, aha, there it is. There's the thing. Another big callback they had was having the 0451 door code. This is an anomaly that appears in many games. Almost. Anytime there is a game about futurism, how the laws of ethics have changed, and or games of the past on alternate timelines with changed ethics, there's almost always one door in the game that has 0451 or 4510, either way, as its door code. As a good old reference to our favorite book, Fahrenheit 451. If you've not read that book, I suggest you do. It's good for when you're living in the wrong timeline. The only other call out that I had laid on here for things that I noticed in the game was when Elizabeth wants to go to France. She opens up the tear in France where the bus comes speeding at her. And I have to read this in French, so I apologize. The movie that was listed was Le Reverie du Jedi, or du Jedi, which would be The Revenge of the Jedi, which was actually the original working title of the Return of the Jedi movie for Star Wars. Before it became The Return of the Jedi, it was The Revenge of the Jedi. So that is a very smart call out to its time period, and that rip and tear in time would have put them forward to about 1982 or 3 to have that title specifically. So Elizabeth tears seem to go about 50 to 60, sometimes 80 years in the future, because we had things like Fortunate Son, Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun, the Tears and Fears that were there along with Revenge of the Jedi. It was definitely a lot of info to put in to a game that was very era appropriate and sneaky. But I think that's what made the game so damn good. Like, it's not like they're sitting there like, here, look at it. This is the information we want to give you. See this? They would do things in the background that would build the story. Whether it was building up how once the people of Colombia of America seceded, they became very, very pro-white and very Catholic Baptist, I guess, as a nation. Uh, Everything revolved around those two things. Were you white and were you Catholic Baptist? You know, like, if you weren't those things, why are you in Colombia? Why? And then anyone else that was on Colombia, unfortunately for them, uh, their life revolved around being the people who did the work in the background, being a cleaner, being a mechanic, being someone who kept the pipes running. And you see that being built in the storyline through many steps. And I think that's, I mean, while unfortunate to see that history has repeated itself, but I guess it's scuttle time. Well, it's unfortunate to have seen history repeat itself. Um, it definitely is era appropriate, I guess would be the right word. You know, I found it even funnier still when like the automatons are first introduced. It's a George Washington automaton, but then when the timelines flip later in the game and you save Mr. Su Cheng, uh, and you're helping the Vox Populi, the Vox Populi's automatons or Tin Men are actually Abe Lincoln's. As annoying as they are to kill, that's a nice detailed add-in that one was a Jefferson or even a Thomas or even a Washington. But Lincoln was the only one, like, could be the only one they had as the Vox Populi version. Another thing, too, that is recognized as a gun owner, the weapons that you find standardly in Colombia, like all the, I guess, official law enforcement weapons, are very simple, very clean. They work. A lot of the guns that the Vox Populi have access to are, they look very makeshift and quick crafted, even though apparently Mr. Shushong helped them at some point in the many timelines. They don't look well crafted. They look like they're just there to be used. Another thing, too, is electricity being as prevalent as it is in, I believe, in American history by like the late 1800s, early 1900s. There was electricity, but like there was not a lot. Like most cities did not have electricity. You'd have simple street lamps and maybe dial phones by like the early 1910s. This game, at the time we're in it, is about 1912, and this entire city has street lamps, electricity, dial phones, fast response systems. We can't forget the Skyline travel system, which is all also electric. It's I think we're attributing that to the Lutece field being its own thing. There's definitely something about that that they don't explain. I don't know if I didn't pick up the correct lore books, but they don't really get into the cross-dimensional Lutece fields. Uh, yeah. Honestly, though, if we're looking away from the lore and just at gameplay as it stands, there are a few things I did not love. For one, I did not like the swapping weapons inventory style thing, where you can only carry two things and then you gotta throw one away to pick up another one. I think Bioshock leaned too far, too hard into the Call of Duty meta that was happening at the time, where every game had to be a Call of Duty like, where it was you get two guns, pick them. Didn't feel bad initially, but replaying it, it's just a pain in the bum. I liked having my options on options on options back in the older Bioshocks, but that's just me being cranky and old. I will say they did a good job compensating having a list of weapons versus having two weapons by having Elizabeth there with you to help collect ammo. That definitely balances the odds that you don't have to break cover as often, especially in 1999 mode. That's a real lifesaver half the time. Um, I guess I was kind of okay with the two plasmid swap system, or sorry, I'm gonna make sure that I say this with a very defined Vigor system. Uh, Having to have two that you swap on and off at all times. I think I liked that better than I liked the scrolling through all my plasmids system. Having all the plasmids on one wheel, you gotta sit there and scroll through and figure out which one you want. This one, you could just press the button or hold it to switch one out at any given time, which made it much easier. But I also don't really use everything because after you get the first one in the game, what else do you need? Nothing. You need nothing. It's just that easy. Let's see what else. Skyline executions, definitely fun. Can't really find many more complaints about things that really got changed. I personally, I mean, I like it from a gameplay standpoint. For me, it's a 9 out of 10. It's not a 10 for 10 because there are some things that I can just shrug at. Like, I don't love to see racism in games. I get it's an artistical depiction of the time period. It's still just not cozy. I will give them credit where credit is due. They weren't throwing around extreme racial slurs that we still see in modern society. They're using a lot of outdated ones. But even then, not the coziest feeling in the world. The gunplay felt good. A lot of the weapons felt responsive. Some of them would have, climb when you'd actually shoot instead of Bioshock 1 where it was just everything's a bullet hose. The Vigor system is also an interesting swap from plasmids. I get we're no longer under the sea. It's not Adam, it's salts. They don't really get into it as to how that came about. Maybe I missed the lore on that as well, but at least with Bioshock and Rapture Under the Sea, you had Adam and you had an explanation for where it came from. This was just kind of like, hey, the Lutesses, they just wanted to give people superpowers because they thought it was funny. You know? I really have nothing else to say. Honestly, if you're going to play the series, I wouldn't start with this one, end with this one, as the series was intended to be. It is a great time all around. I definitely recommend challenging yourself to 1999 mode with no vending machines. That is quite a crippling gameplay style. It is no crutches, no wheelchair, just hot flaming glass and cactuses the whole way. It's a rough time, but it is possible. I just recently got my trophy after actually never having gotten that trophy before because every time I would do a playthrough, I would fall for the discount dollar bill in the Hall of Heroes. Just because it didn't say dollar bill on the front, I was like, yeah, this won't count. It counted. 9 out of 10. Great game. Good call-outs to last games. Recommended highly to play this. Hopefully I'll be able to get some more stuff recorded soon. I've been very busy of late, so I don't know when the next video is going to come out. But when it does, I will see you guys then and there and in the next one.